Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Murder in the Morning. I'm your host, Eli, and I am completely alone today. That's why I have each and every one of you guys, all 16 of you now. Just a little heads up, my ADHD is on one today, but we are bringing the energy. Sun is out, snow is melting, spring vibes are in the air here in New England. Does not make me miss the brutal Minnesota winters whatsoever. Um, And speaking of Minnesota, our case today brings us there to the heart, or really any organ of the Midwest. Um, in fact, we start across the northern border in Ottawa, actually, um, just north of where we'll end up later in the story. So today's sources, a few of them I got from listverse.com, an article by Himanshu Sharm, an article by the CS staff at Campus Safety Magazine, um, and as well as Wikipedia, and everything else will be listed in the show notes. So here we go. In March of 2018, Nadia, and forgive my pronunciation on this, Kaiju committed suicide by jumping off a bridge into the Rideau River. Rideau River. I have the spelling here right below it of how to sound it out. Rideau River, located in Ontario. At the time, Nadia was an 18-year-old freshman at Carleton University in Ottawa. She was suffering from depression, a miscarriage, and all of this while away from her family during her first year alone. Nadia happened to be last seen on March 9th and was reported missing a few days later. Unfortunately, her body would not be discovered for 6 whole weeks later in April. And according to the Campus Safety magazine, the day she went missing was the same day her parents learned that she was seeking help for her mental health. Um, the family was clearly upset to have not known this earlier, but there are privacy rules for a reason. And I don't think the Carleton University um, should be torn apart at all for their privacy standards, but I can understand why the parents of Nadia were upset that the university hadn't informed them about her mental health struggles. Anyways, but beyond this mild controversy, it appeared like an open and shut suicide. There was a young lady who suffered from depression. She was on antidepressants, recently lost a baby, and it seems like that was that. But as people started to dig, it turned out there was something much darker at play here. So, leading up to Nadia's death, she, like many others, turned towards the internet for refuge. Nadia started posting blogs about her troubles and thoughts of suicide or harming herself. This is where she met someone, or rather, someone met her. Someone was targeting Nadia. One day, as she was posting along on the internet, a reply had popped up on one of her blog posts from a quote, Cami D. Allegedly, Cami was a female nurse from Minnesota. So this stranger was very encouraging, and not encouraging in the way you'd expect. Not trying to be helpful, offer support, um, just listen to her. Instead, this stranger would urge Nadia to go through the suicide, even going as far as making a suicide pact with her. And sadly, as we know, Nadia did go through with this. So let's go back 2 years to 2006. Enter Celia Blay. Um, I can't find out exactly how, but Celia kind of blew this case wide TF open. So at the time in 2006, Celia was a British teacher. Yet another country in the mix. We got Britain, Canada, and the United States of America. So Celia, a British school teacher, was also providing online counseling. And this is where she discovered, quote, Cami D's true identity. Like I previously said, I don't know exactly how she Sherlocked her way to the truth, but essentially, Celia Blay had been talking to another woman about her struggles and actually trying to help this woman. She then learned that the woman she was trying to help had entered a suicide pact with another young woman. allegedly a female nurse. So now curious, Celia began to look into this quote nurse, and she soon discovered that she was not a young female Minnesotan nurse, but rather an older male by the name of William Melchert-Dinkel, who actually was from Faribault, Minnesota. And I apologize if you can hear the pages turning. I yet again forgot to type this one out. But anyways, Sir Dinkel over here, he was the man behind the computer. He was Cammy D. So as Celia began to dig and dig and dig, she found multiple aliases from this one awful man. Whether it was Cammy D or Lee Dow, he was usually stuck to the 20-something-year-old female nurse alias, essentially. Maybe to me, this kind of seems like his way of connecting um, to his target audience, I guess, younger people who are suffering from mental health issues, and he's using this young female nurse as a way in to gain their trust rather than being a weird old creepy man. So, anyways, after monitoring blog posts and looking for suspicious activity, Blay began to recognize his pattern. She monitored these chat rooms so much that she was able to recognize Dinkel from his bad spelling to his common phrases. After a while, Blay basically had everything she could on this man. Here's a quote from Blay herself. By the time we had about, quote, by that time, we had about 50 cases we knew of that we'd been in touch with suicidal people. We knew his age, his address, we knew everything about him, his family, what he did at church, end quote. And that was from ABC News. All right. So we know about his communications and the suicide pact he had with Nadia, but what else did Celie discover? Who else out there was falling into Dinkel's trap? So I want to make this point. Remember, this is still all Celia doing this. Celia Blay and one other friend, Kat Lowe. There are no police or any other law enforcement assistance. It is these two women, in Britain, mind you, that are doing all of the legwork for this case. Okay, so another young man dealing with depression named Mark Drybro. He came into contact with Dinkel as well. Once again, this old married man claimed to be a female nurse in her 20s suffering this time from terrible bipolar disorder. And in their exchanges, Dinkel mentioned to Mark that, quote, you can easily hang from a door, end quote. Mark's mother also described what she saw as a suicide pact between the two of them as well. So now we have two suicide pacts between two young people and this old shit stain. Soon, sadly, 32-year-old Mark Drybro hung himself in his apartment in 2005. Mark's sister later found emails between the two of them on his computer, and Mark's mother actually blames his death on Dinkel, which I don't particularly blame her for. I can see why she blames him. So now, with evidence from Mark that she had found from 2005, this first unnamed woman that she had first come into contact with and realized who this man was, and then a slew of incriminating evidence from an array of chat rooms, including Nadia's. With all this information, Blay went to the authorities because she, as well as I, thought that would be plenty to at least start an investigation, to prompt investigators to look into this man, to get the ball rolling, right? Would you guys like to guess how the police responded? They didn't believe her. Bum, ba, bum. Classic, right? Uh, the ABC News article I read said, quote, they didn't take her seriously, end quote. But I can imagine them fully laughing in her face back in 2005 during essentially the internet's preteen years, early years, before people believed that bad people were out there. Excuse me. But did that stop Celia? Not at all. Of course it didn't. She and her friend Kat continued to track this man and monitor his behavior online. In fact, Kat Lowe even began to contact him directly through email. And I really, really hope she was using an alias as well, doing to Dinkel what Dinkel had been doing to others. The exchange between Kat and Dinkel proved very useful. Um, sorry, I just thought of this and I might as well point it out. His full name is William Melchert-Dinkel. Melchert-Dinkel being his last name, but I think Dinkel just sounds good for this character, so we're just sticking to Dinkel for the story. Anyways, she had said that Dinkel had bragged about watching an Englishman hang himself, referencing Mark Drybrow, which Dinkel has since denied. And to top it off, Kat then saw Dinkel himself over a webcam and obtained a photo or a snapshot of him during these email exchanges. So again, Celia Blay, with this new information, with the face to the name of the man who was doing and encouraging young people to kill themselves, with this new information, she again tries to go to the authorities. This time, she even sent all of her information straight to the FBI. And yet again, nothing. Celia said, quote, "The FBI didn't even reply to me. We never got a reply. And this was before Nadia's death," end quote. She's doing this all before 2008. Nadia's death could have been stopped. But I digress. All right, so this brings us back to the beginning of our story, spring of 2008. Back to Minnesota, well, Canada first, sorry, back to Canada. So, after Nadia's body was found in the Canadian River, news must have made its way overseas, or maybe Celia was just on the lookout, who knows. But anyways, Blake caught wind of this and decided third time is the charm. So yet again, Celia packed up all of her information and contacted the police directly in Dick Dinkel's town, Faribault, Minnesota. And finally, somebody listened to her. A few weeks after Nadia's death and after her body was discovered in April, Dinkel was arrested and charged on April 23rd. ABC News was able to report on what this man's statements were after the fact. Quote, according to police, Melchert-Dinkel confessed that he had encouraged dozens of people to commit suicide, entered into 10 to 11 suicide pacts online with individuals all over the world, and, quote, assisted in 5 or less individuals in killing themselves. Police said Dinkel told him he did it for the thrill of the chase, end quote. So this piece of human earwax is finally in police custody, and we have a pile of evidence against him, thanks to Mrs. Blay. Entirely thanks to Mrs. Blay. Awesome, right? Kind of. It's kind of awesome. So in 2011, Minnesota courts charged Dinkel with 2 counts of assisting suicide. These were for both Nadia and Mark Drybrow. Unfortunately, this relief did not last long. Soon after, the Minnesota Supreme Court overturned those same convictions due to something in the law that I couldn't honestly comprehend. But essentially, they sent the case back down to the lower courts for a retrial. Now, in Nadia's case, Dinkel had actually told her to hang herself, or encouraged her, gave her tips, essentially over the chats, telling her to hang herself. But Nadia actually jumped off a bridge, and this is how she passed. So this changed his charge from assisting a suicide to attempting to assist a suicide. So that lowered his charge dramatically. However unfortunate that result was, Dinkel was again charged with assisting the suicide of Mark. But apparently, these charges don't hold much weight in terms of jail time. So Dick Dinkel over here was only sentenced to 365 days in jail, plus 10 years probation. Like, obviously, he wasn't there. He didn't directly kill them, but he put so many ideas and thoughts and encouragement, and he even promised to kill himself with these people. He made pacts to do the same. Like, what this man did is unjustifiable, and 360 days in jail, I don't believe is enough. Anyways, can you guys guess what happened with his jail time? I'm sure you're right. He served barely half of that. In 2015, I'm not sure why these court dates are so spread out, but it seemed like it was just a very long, drawn out law process of going to the Supreme Court, back to the lower courts, this, that, and the other. But eventually in 2015, he was released after serving only 178 days in jail. And today he remains a free man, with his probation coming to an end here very, very shortly. Um, he, apparently, Dinkel has since apologized and claims he wants to be better and a more contributing factor to society. But I honestly don't care what he has to say. Not much is known about him anymore. He must keep a quiet life, and honestly, I'd like to keep it that way. He can just fade into non existence. But what I was really disappointed about, because I really wanted to learn some more about this wonderful woman, was Celia Blay. Really tried to see what she's been up to in the past decade or so. But sadly, I wasn't able to find really anything on her, except for a photo, a really adorable photo taken of her with her horse near her home in Wiltshire, England, back in 2011. So to me, that makes me feel like she either retired or just likes teaching kids on the down low. And either of those is good with me because she did way more than she ever had to. She did way more than the police could have dreamed of doing. And she brought so much, not, I can't say happiness, but just comfort and relief in knowing that these families could put their blame somewhere. They didn't have to just lose their child to a random act of suicide. They know now, thanks to Celia Blay, that there was a man out there urging them and hurting their children day after day online. And I think that we have to remember Celia Blay's good work in all of this. Anyways, I'm probably rambling. So I think this is as good as time as any to say goodbye.